Board Member. There, that's perfect.
Good. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight for what is really a celebration of the YANA Fellowship. When we talk about YANA Fellowship, its specifics and kind of the broader goal of this program. My name is Rob Leighton. I am the Executive Director of iMission Institute. We do marketing and technology for social sector organizations, nonprofits, schools, municipalities, school of management, 88, and a YANA board member or an ex-YANA board member. They use the term emeritus, and I'm not quite ready to get on that the idea of emeritus, and I'm dealing with it. Anyway, so tonight is a celebration of the program, and just to give you kind of a perspective on where this program came from. So back in my journey in New Haven was to come from Los Angeles to go to the School of Management, and I stayed in New Haven. I did not have much of a connection to Yale during 20, 30 years. I was very involved in the community, serving on a lot of nonprofit boards, and got to know the folks, got to know Peter and Mark and a lot of folks here at Dwight Hall, and really appreciated the work they did for the nonprofits in our communities. About 2015, 2016, I became involved with YANA. And so here is this, again, I still don't have much of a connection to this institution as Yale, but still very involved in the community, have this YANA connection, and aware of Dwight Hall. And so there's these 3 points, right? And so much of what we try to do in YANA is think about connections, think about networks, thinking about bringing people together. And so we sat in 2017, I guess, and thought about what would be a program that might connect the community, Dwight Hall, and YANA. And it grew into something that was bigger than the original conception of place-based, New Haven-based. And so 32 fellows have gone through the program since 2017. They've been all over the United States, some overseas, an incredible, excited group of mission-driven, passionate people that subsequently went off and have done some work. And the thought there is, it's not just about the internship. It's not just about the idea of creating exposure to what a career in the social sector might be. It was, again, consistent with the YANA philosophy. It's about, and I'll use the elevator speech, connecting, convening, and collaborating for social change or world good or social good. And the idea was that this idea of fellowship was an important concept that we want to tease out here. It's not just about internship as fellowship, but fellowship across generations of the Yale community. And so that's kind of what's the ethos of what we're celebrating tonight. And with that, I'd like to let our panelists, Jonathan, if you'd start us, introduce themselves. And what you do have is the generations in front of you. And so that's kind of what we're trying to bring together.
And is this by a little opening talk or just?
I think this is talk about yourself and your background and
A couple of minutes.
yeah, 3, 5. Talk about what brought you here.
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure, and then you'll ask questions.
Yeah,
That's exactly. Okay, all right. No, sorry. Well, let me say I'm delighted to be here in Dwight Hall for the meaningful part of my life began. I come from a small town in Fairfield County, less than 12, where my family settled in 1680 as farmers. And they remained on the farm until my grandfather came to Yale in the class of '02. I had a little experience with the wider world. I came to Yale in 1961, but through Dwight Hall and my mentors, Bert Capone, and William Sloan Coffin, I was introduced to the Ulysses Grant Foundation and became its director for 3 years. Then as now, U.S. Grant offers classes to young people from Dixwell Hill and other communities, initially aiming to prepare the students for prep school, but in my time, I was director for 3 years, we broadened it and had kept students in high school coming in the afternoon for tutorials. And so it's both prep school and college. We added a summer program in my time. So it was a year round. And through US Grant, I learned that there's so much talent undiscovered and underprepared because of poor schools. And Yale was in those days almost all white. And I just knew intuitively that was wrong. And so after graduation, I joined a talent search program that was based here at Yale. And I scoured the country for talented high school students, places like the south side of Chicago, Watts, and Los Angeles. And we found lots of really bright young people, but their SAT scores were not very good. And so they couldn't get into colleges that were truly commensurate with their ability. And so we founded a transitional year program, took in 60 students a year that we saw along the way. It was kind of a postgraduate boot camp. I taught history, and it was amazing. Within a couple of months, a kid with a 450 verbal was at 650. And in those days, that was good enough to get into a really first-rate college. So this is both men and women, just boys. John Roman, who some of you may know, was one of my best students and is now leading an oral history of TYP. So from the beginning, public service and mentoring in pursuit of equal opportunity was diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sorry. It has been the core of my life. I was chief of staff to Beaman Brewster here, vice president of the University of Chicago, president of the New School of New York, president of the MacArthur Foundation, and president of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Happy to talk about many of those. But my greatest satisfaction has come from my work with NGOs. I was chair of Human Rights Watch for a while, the World Refugee and Migration Council, American University of Afghanistan, the American Exchange Project started by David McCullough III here at Yale. And I have to say, several people more. But I get most satisfaction these days from mentoring students at Yale and Harvard and college, New York, where I worked for a while. And I have two strong messages, and we'll stop. One is to the students, live a balanced life. Don't get consumed by your work. Give back by service, whether paid or volunteer, but give back. And the second was to build your personal networks early. I never looked for a job my whole life. Every job came to me through the networks that I cultivated from the time I was at Yale. So I look forward to our discussion, your questions, and I really admire what the book does. Thank you, Jonathan. Hope that wouldn't do it. That was perfect. Vision.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Asia Brown, and I'm a principal at Wellspring Consulting. So I'm not a principal at a school, but I am a strategy consultant, and my resume and bio is nowhere near as long as my colleague over here to my left. But I am doing social sector consulting, and to share a little bit more about what that is that I'm taking some of the analytical tools that you see in the for-profit consulting. So financial analysis, programmatic and data analysis, and working with nonprofits to develop what their strategy should be over the next 3 to 5 years. And I really like the work that I'm doing now because it is interesting to have all the different questions that the social sector does have and that the nonprofit has. I work across all sectors, so I've worked with education organizations, human rights organizations, international aid organizations. So the list kind of goes on there. But what I tend to see with the organizations I work with is that sometimes the questions that they're asking are just so nuanced because you have to think about fundraising. You have to think about the impact that you want to have. And how do you define what that impact actually is? Because you do have a big issue there. And I do really like the work that I'm doing right now because I know that even when I'm behind an Excel spreadsheet or busy making slides for longer than I would like to, that there usually is impact that is behind that there is someone's life who's being positively impacted with that. To talk a little bit about my Yale experience. So I was Yale College class of 2016, and then I also got my master's of public health from the School of Public Health in Healthcare Management in 2019, alongside of my master's of arts and religion in 2019 as well. Yes, I was doing too much at that time, but it got me to where I am right now. And I entered Yale College pre-med, like a lot of people do, thinking I'm going to go ahead and be a doctor. And then I realized that wasn't quite the right fit. And I switched gears to think a bit more about public health. And I switched my major to history of science, history of medicine, and public health, which is still a mouthful to say all of those words. But I switched and I was thinking, how can I think about systems a little bit more? How can I not only think about the kind of the person to person way of interacting? And what I was advised early on in my Yale career was that Yale has a lot of resources. So you need to be able to leverage them. If there's something that you think you can't do, if you ask enough questions, you might find out that there's something that can help you to do that. And I took those words to heart because the summer after my sophomore year, I used the International Summer Award and I did a study abroad program in the Dominican Republic where I really got to learn more about not only take classes, but also working in clinics, both in a rural setting as well as in a more of an urban setting. And I was able to see, okay, this is one view of public health and what this can look like. The following summer, I applied for one of the fellowships through I think it was the Office of Career Services, or it might have been a different office, but I was able to get a summer fellowship that covered my time in Bolivia, where I was working with another NGO. And through that work, I was helping to teach sessions about preventing drug usage in schools, but also anti-bullying. And I was fundraising too. So I got to see some of that administrative side of what the nonprofit sector looks like, as well as that public health side of things. And then by the time I got to my graduate programs, I was working at Yale for my internships for the last 2 years of my program. And it was at the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation. And I was given some great opportunities where my supervisor, Atisha Johnson, who I'm so grateful for, she curated my experience so that it would really be about the things I was interested in. I was interested in religion as a social determinant of health. I was interested in the consulting side of things and needs assessment and how do you make a system work better, knowing what the needs are. And she blended those two things together. And she also had said to me when I was looking for jobs, the thing that you do that last year of school, and she's like, Asia, I know you're looking at for-profit consulting jobs, but I don't think you're going to like it. Just being honest with you, I think you should look into social sector consulting. And I hadn't heard about it before, but she really opened up my imagination as to what that could look like. And I was able to learn more about it. And now I've been doing this work for 5.5 years now, almost 6 years. And something that I've seen throughout over the last 5 years that I have not been affiliated as a student to Yale is just the ways that everything really comes full circle. I've gotten to travel a bit to different cities. I get to connect with some of my old friends who I sometimes haven't seen in years. When I go, I'm like, who do I know here? Who can I meet up with? And I've seen the ways that all of the Yaleys that I've known from undergrad and graduate school are doing something for the good of the world. And it looks very different. There's some people doing it in the for-profit sector. There's some people doing it in the nonprofit sector, but there's this common theme when I'm asking people, what are you up to? What are you really passionate about? How are you spending your time? Some people it's board service or volunteering or what they're doing on the side with advocacy work. For other people, it's actually the work they're doing in their day job and their 9 to 5. And it's just really cool to see those connections. And I'm grateful that I got connected with YANA last year because now it's able to open my eyes even more to try on different things and seeing how different parts of the social sector and people's lives really fit together and how there's this common mission of doing good and really seeing, oh, this person works in philanthropy. Is that something I might want to try on at some point in time? I can learn a little bit more. And even with my clients, seeing how it builds trust. They're like, you went to Yale too? And that just starts a conversation where we're already starting a step closer to, okay, I can trust you as an advisor for my organization, my baby that I'm holding so close. So I'm really grateful to be here today. And I think just the connections across generations, as Rob was talking about, is just really important and something that you can see in different stages. And I've come to appreciate more since I've been out of my student world.
Hi everyone, my name is Hameeda. I am a senior at Yale. I'm a transfer student, so I transferred from a community college just last year. So it's my second and last year. I am a political science major. I'm in Berkeley College, and I was a summer fellow for YANA last summer, and I was working with YANA Dwight, which is a refugee advocacy organization here in New Haven. I was working with their ESL team, and I really got close to the women who have just arrived here in New Haven, mostly Afghan refugees who arrived after the fall of Afghanistan in 2021. I myself am an Afghan. I was born there, I was raised there, and moved to the US in 2015. And since then, I've been very involved in advocacy work, especially for women and refugees. And the past summer, I really got close to these women and saw their hardship and saw just their resilience as well in moving to a new country and trying to build a new life. And through that, I also saw a bunch of young refugee girls who I saw that needed more guidance. Because I think a lot of resources were going towards the older women who were coming in, which is understandable, but the younger ones were being very left behind. And so I started working with them and also started branching out to girls inside the country as well. And from there, I forged relationships that I think I'll have for a lifetime. I spoke at the other YANA event before the break, and we had two girls from Afghanistan who were able to come to the US, full scholarship, full tuition to study at a boarding school in Utah. They are absolutely enjoying the US right now, and joining horseback riding, doing physics, doing experiments that I didn't think I could do. So they're having a lot of fun. And YANA really allowed me to flourish in public service. I always like to say I am a product of public service. I went to a USA-funded school, which was kind of a sister school of the American University of Afghanistan. It's called the International School of Kabul. And there, all of my teachers were American, and they were all in their 20s, coming to a whole other country where they were really risking their lives, and through them, I really understood public service to be, more than just offering help. It was really placing yourself in the shoes of people who you're trying to help. And I think their experiences really brought me to where I am today. I don't think I would be anywhere where I am without public service. And I don't think I would do public service a justice if I don't follow that footstep as well. And I really appreciate YANA for giving me the platform and the opportunity and the funding to do so. So I'm really glad to be here.
If anybody has any question about why we need USAID, just a quick question: has anybody been through the fellowship? Is there anybody who is a fellow other than Hameeda? Anybody who's thinking about becoming a fellow in the room? There's some of you I know are not thinking about becoming a fellow, but younger folks. Okay.
Rob, I do want to be sure that Ben Hernandez and his fellow leaders of the YANA student chapter have some opportunity tonight to speak a bit about their program.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and say
right now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hi everyone, my name is Ben. I interned with YANA this summer after my first year. I'm currently a junior. And so since then I've kind of stuck through with YANA, and last year there was another student who graduated from DAC who took the initiative of getting all the paperwork together and really going forward with founding a student chapter here at Yale of the YANA group. And I'm privileged this year along with Ben and Thomas kind of leading it and helping it get its grounding at Yale. Our focus and mission on campus is really to kind of get other students thinking about the needs of nonprofit sector and social impact of a place like Yale, where consulting or finance kind of seems like the only way to go sometimes. And this year we've kind of been getting our bearings, and we've hosted a couple of events. We brought Dave McCullough, who runs the American Exchange Project, here a couple of weeks ago. He spoke to a couple of students at the Alumni Association about the work that he does and how he kind of got started in nonprofit while he was at Yale. We're hosting an event next week or 2 weeks from now with someone from John Jay College, so has no affiliation to Yale, but runs a group focused on, equitable admissions. And so we're very excited to hear from him, and we're excited to host more events throughout the year that kind of, get students or connect students with these nonprofit leaders and show them alternatives to some careers that a lot of students here can go into.
Any of the other chapter folks want to say anything? And does anybody have any questions? Because this is a small group, so if we can have a flow of a discussion would be great. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to go off of what Ben said earlier, I really enjoyed being part of the YANA super chapter this year. I had no real connection to YANA beforehand, but really excited and happy to be a part of YANA, the work they do, kind of bringing social impact work to more Yale alums and giving a community to Yale alums to work in the nonprofit and social impact space.
In your name?
I'm Thomas.
Thomas. Nice to meet you.
John, if you could pick up on that, I mean, we see it, we're at what I think we all feel is kind of an inflection in the American experience, and you've seen a lot of those swings. You funded change, you run organizations that you've led change, you've confronted these moments in American experience. Talking about how connecting has helped you navigate that. You did touch on that already, but as we think about going forward, how do you think about it? Did you talk about that and think about that anyway?
Okay, well, I should also say that when I was at the New School and leader of the East and Central Europe Committee of Human Rights Watch, I worked a lot with underground groups in Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. And I'm happy to say that my work was funded by the Yale alum Daniel Rose, who made it possible for me in the New School to play a role, something like we played during the Nazi period when we were Jewish intellectuals left from Europe and started a university. So back to your question, I think of myself as a realistic optimist. Both words are important. And I taught history, so my sense of history is cyclical, but like this. And seems to me that we're in a down period, which I would like to think is the end of some things that we don't like and not the beginning of what a new Americans would look like. With that said, I think the future is open. John Morton Blum, the history teacher here, used to strike the word inevitable whenever I used it in paper. Nothing is inevitable. People can make a difference. And that's my sophomore year. And I still believe it. So I think it is open to us to shape the next cycle where the country and by implication where the world is headed. I think this generation needs to take the lead. I think a lot of our leadership is old and of the past. We need younger people, fresh eyes, and we need them from all walks of life, public service, NGOs, universities, private sector, to work together. And I don't think the next era is going to be shaped necessarily from the top down. I really think we're in a point where we've under invested in local issues and local organizations. And I believe what's happening across the country, and I have only some benefits, as I'm sure we all do, but there are groups coming together at the local level that are beginning to push back to think about what the next era in U.S. history might look like. And so I think YANA is a beacon of hope, keeping alive our commitment to a more just and peaceful world. And I really like the fellowship program. I think it's exactly what we need, and I'd like to see it grow. Because as I talk to students here at Yale, because of Edwards and for excellence on the board, there's so many students, especially now, once thought they might do public service. The intern in Washington no longer see that as an option, and so they're very open to working with NGOs, working sector, and this is a very good way to help them see some places to go next. I do think that YANA builds bridges, and so that we learn to talk to the other, whether it's somebody of a deeply different background than we, or somebody who has a different point of view, political orientation. But YANA is out there building bridges so that we can talk across divides. And I also think the ability to talk across divides in our own country also opens us up to a better capacity to respect and work with, talk with, become friends with people from other countries. And on April 7th, I'm doing a conversation with Jackson, 4 o'clock, with Stephen Heinz, who is president of the Rockefeller Fund, also chairman of the committee I appointed at the Academy and the Strength of American Democracy. So what he'll be talking about on April 7th is a paper he wrote while in sabbatical, trying to define what the new world order is going to look like. It puts all the pieces together, has 12 pillars of what that order should look like. He doesn't see the U.S. retreating into isolationism, but he does see the U.S. working more as a partner and a colleague, and not the remaining superpowers. It'll be an interesting session. If you want to go, you want to sign up through Jackson. I think it may be sold out, but just announcing it now. So I think you'll enjoy it.
Thank you. Asia, your journey has been extraordinary and remarkable. And you did it all just having met with YANA a year ago. But there was something in the Yale ethos, there's something in the Yale community, there's something in the Yale connection that supported that journey. You talked about kind of what got you here, but how do you think about that network and that power of social network, not just to bridge the divides, but to help us organize for more positive change, right? How do you think about YANA specifically, but Yale in general? How do you think about those things?
Yeah, I think when it comes to fostering connections, a lot of that is trying to find some areas of similarities that you can start from, and then to be able to have more conversations from there. And I found that, as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, having the Yale name behind me has been really helpful with having conversations with people, and even with some of my clients, someone's looking like, I don't know if I want to listen to you, and especially because you're kind of young and you're a Black woman, I don't know if you have anything to say to me. And then having some sort of common ground usually helps to break the ice a little bit and can help with that community building over time, building trust over time. Because some people say that trust is earned, other people say that I might start with trust and then you have to break it to lose it. And there's lots of different, rationale for those philosophies, but I think building trust still takes a lot of effort. and doing what you can to like actually ask questions to understand where someone is coming from. And say like, okay, why do you believe what you believe? And not necessarily like in a combative way, but actually out of curiosity, because I find that amongst Yalees, like writ large, that there tends to be a lot of people who like to think very deeply and very critically about things that you don't always find elsewhere. And I think that willingness to engage in those conversations can be really helpful. I think in terms of thinking about organizing for broader change, I think some of that is about really just talking to other people, because I think especially we don't have the same type of places we used to have pre-pandemic. Like we're just starting to build up those third spaces, as they call them, where you're like actually meeting with people, or you have like regular cadences with people. And I think finding ways to engage with people, even if it's your neighbor and you don't know them, can really make a huge difference. And then figuring out, okay, what's the thing that we can agree on? What do we actually and tangibly want to do to be able to happen, to make an impact?
Just checking any questions. Interesting conversation.
Good question. I think all of us here, are kind of on the same page. We would like everybody in the university to be doing a YANA Fellowship, or at least some kind of social service, non-profit endeavor as they learn and plan for their career. What are the obstacles, right? That's my question. And it's kind of also to the students, like, is it financial? Just in terms of number of internships, or what are the different areas of reluctance to go into some of these?
I'm gonna.
Well, say their names when we start.
Oh, yes. If you're.
Oh, I'm Katie Lauder.
Say again.
Katie Lauder. I'm with Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services in New Haven. I'm also on helping to review some of the internship, the applications.
Great.
Yeah, for me, one of the barriers for doing public service work in the first place, I was talking about doing ESL, and I mentioned how hard it is to teach English as a second language to somebody who probably never went to school, especially the refugee women that are arriving here, my mother included. It's almost a full-time job. Even 1 hour of sitting down, especially if it's over Zoom, if you're teaching someone English, it's like teaching someone physics and you've never taken physics yourself. It's a very hard job. And public service in itself is a very, I would say, strenuous and mental job in itself. And I think that was one of the barriers that I had wanting to go into public service, but then I applied to the YANA Fellowship wanting to do ESL. And and then my application got accepted. And I think that made me feel very appreciated, because I didn't think that, oh, okay, they would give me money just to teach someone English. That's a lot of people who do teach ESL usually do it as a volunteer. So that now that I was getting paid for it, I really felt appreciated. I felt seen, and I felt that if someone that was teaching my mom English and they weren't just a volunteer, because we went through a lot of volunteers. I've done it myself with my mom. It gets very hard and people drop. So now that I was getting paid for it, I was very excited to go into these Zoom meetings and teach English. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, I have to log into this meeting and teach English. I was really getting paid for it. And I felt very thankful for YANA for making that happen for me. And I would also say the sense of the economy that is right now. I don't know how feasible it is for someone to want to go into public service when you need public service yourself. So I think YANA making it possible to get funding is really the stepping stone into me wanting to continue this type of work in the future.
Dwight Hall folks, I think you guys might have David.
Hi, everybody. I'm David Wilkins. I'm Dwight Hall Yale Director of Philanthropy. So I work on fundraising for Dwight Hall as a whole, and we really value the YANA Dwight Hall Summer Fellows program. And specifically to answer your question about funding, Katie, in summer 2024, Dwight Hall Summer Fellows as a whole supported 31 Yale students. 14 were full-time fellows 6 of those 14 were YANA Dwight Hall Summer Fellows. And then Mark, our Director of Programming and Evaluation, also introduced a new supplemental funding program as part of it, where Dwight Hall provided top-off funding to the SEA, the one-time fellowship that you can use from the Office of Fellowship. So if you were a fellow in an expensive city like NYC or LA and the SEA wasn't enough for you, Dwight Hall was providing additional support. So this is one way of stating that funding is a barrier, because as Mark can attest, there are, for the 31 fellows last summer, I believe there were at least 60 or more eligible applicants. So we just need to keep doing a good job with marketing and communications and building relationships with folks who are former summer fellows. Barney over here was, weren't you in the very first group of summer fellows, Barney? So Dwight Hall Summer Fellows goes back about 57, 58 years, and Barney was in one of the very first cohorts. And so I'll stop there, but funding is a constraint.
Patricia.
My name is Patricia Melton. I'm class of '83. I run New Haven Promise in New Haven. And we work primarily with students out of the public schools, but many of our students are first generation of college, and they're coming from blue collar or low income backgrounds, but they are able to sort of learn. I mean, part of the challenge is that just not knowing what the options are. So we have a very robust talent program where we really place these students in paid internships. We don't do any unpaid. It's just an equity issue. And we probably placed about 200 kids, young folks who are in the city. And we have 40 students who go here to Yale. So it includes them as well. So on the funding front, I think YANA is great because it really shows, the opportunity to be exposed to that. Because when you come to Yale, you don't think you're going to go into, I was a pre-med, a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it may be. And I think just the environment that is supportive and encourages folks to go into these fields, and then folks can see that, yes, you can make a living. So I make a very good salary, at what I do. But certainly when I was in undergrad, there's no way that I thought that I could, go in this direction. So I think many of us sort of stumble into it. And so platforms like this are very important. And a lot of our students end up going into the social sector because of the fact that they're exposed and they're in a city that's very activist. The other thing that I just wanted to mention right quick is there's not just the Dwight Hall, but Yale has done a lot to make sure that there's funding available for first-gen students to actually fund their internships. So there are these resources that go beyond. I mean, there's money like all over the campus for students who are first generation to college who want to get their internship funded. There's a robust sort of pipeline through the first gen Yale group. There's some things through just some of the more structured career services. So the pots are there, and it's just a matter of, getting the word out, spreading the word.
Yes. Go, please.
Yeah, and I think in terms of long-term sustainability, because I think there's so many opportunities on Yale's campus, and I've been grateful to have been recipients of different fellowships. I think because I look at the financials of nonprofits, and I think just the financing of nonprofits generally, when you're looking at nonprofits where basically their work is staff, so all of their funding goes towards staff time, and they're just so resource constrained. If you're looking at a budget where someone's looking oh, they're getting paid $20,000 or $30,000 and can't have to be a recipient of different services that they're now eligible for depending on the city they're in. If you're thinking about the long-term sustainability, it's hard to see what can my future be especially if like coming from a low income background, like, okay, this is my time where I can actually make more than my parents were making. And then to like go into a social sector job, not only see like the best opportunity versus being a lawyer or a doctor where, you know, the timeline is long, but you also are seeing people who make a lot of money. So I think that's like a larger structural issue, which is a lot harder to deal with, but I do think that it is real. And I think the more that people can see that like what career pathways can look like, I think the more helpful it is, because you're not going to only be a coordinator forever. Or there are also like other positions and other types of nonprofits, and things look different in different sectors and different types of work. And I think knowing what's out there makes a huge difference, because I didn't know that social sector consulting was a thing even until my supervisor happened to mention it to me when I was like asking her for career advice. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known, and I probably wouldn't be here in this type of work right now.
Thank you. I'm next. I didn't know that it existed either, so.
I think it's also it's true that students who had experience while undergraduates or even graduate students like YANA or like US Grant are more likely as they are in different fields and grow older to serve in not-for-profit roles and to be more generous philanthropists. And some even at some point say, well, you know, made my money and I'm going to go back now to my roots at Yale and YANA and give up running a big company and working in for-profit.
So the two concepts, two ideas that were raised earlier, right? You have this idea of balanced life and this idea of what is a career path and what is, I think you referred to as switching goals, switching careers. So can you talk about what you talked about, that careers can change, but social sector work can be really hard also. So how do we think about balance for ourselves and for the community members? So, I mean, did you have some thoughts on that?
I'll let you.
Go ahead. Jonathan, why don't you go?
So the question is, what
Two ideas were raised, the idea of balance and
balance life? Yeah.
And again, both of you raised this idea that we can, that the career pathway is not
Yeah.
laid in concrete.
Right.
It's something you can change as you go through. We have all done it. I like to say I've had 4 or 5 different careers.
Yeah.
John, you probably have 2.
Yeah, well, and I should have added to my list of things I gave advice about. It was the third, which is early in life, find a good mentor and stick with that mentor over time. And, I learned probably more from King and Brewster when I was chief of staff and president than I learned anywhere else. He was a really fine person, and the skills I learned there have helped me, whether it's raising money or running a university or a foundation. Skills I learned and we're durable. In my own case, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Father was, and to develop private so much in public. I applied to Yale and Harvard and got taken by Harvard and rejected by Yale. So I didn't want to leave Yale, so I stayed and worked in the talent search program and kept applying to Yale and Harvard and kept getting the same response. And then finally on try 3, maybe or 4, I got into both. And at that moment, 1970, Mayday, I got asked to be chief of staff for the president of Yale. And so I turned down the Yale Law School, and I loved working in the president's office. And I said, well, maybe running universities is what you'd like to do. And for that, a PhD would be better. And so I pivoted from law to getting a PhD in history. I didn't have enough money to do it full time, but I worked at Yale all the while I was doing my courses. And that, yes, it helped me run the new school, but it also got me in a much more interesting life, working in philanthropy, being able to give out $2,220 million, which was pretty good, more money to the world than in the US. That was a change, big change.
Vision thoughts.
So it was switching careers, and there was another balance, yes. So balance is hard, but I think knowing the things that can help you recharge is really important, especially when you're working a really draining job and knowing like what that means. And that looks for different ways for different people, but I do think it's important, especially when you're used to being an undergrad and like working all the time and like pulling all-nighters. And it's just kind of like the way of life is to just keep on like sprinting. Like eventually sprinting is not, you're going to get tired. And I think I found that knowing when I need to like take a step back allows me to do better work later, and allows me to be better to like my friends and to my family, and just to be like a better person overall. And when it comes to pivoting careers, like I'm pretty young still in my career, so I haven't done a lot of pivoting yet. Pivoting was more so with my internships, but I think using every experience that I've had as a learning experience has been really important. Of like, what did I like about this? What did I not like about this? Like, what are things that I'm naturally good at? What are things that I need to try a little bit harder to be good at? And using that information to see what could be next. And even just talking with different people about what they're doing and not being afraid to ask questions of like, oh, that person is doing this kind of work. What does that actually mean? What does that look like? Because sometimes titles are very opaque. And even when people are like, what do you do as a consultant? Usually like, okay, this is what the variety of things I could be doing in a week, because consulting is also seems like a black box if you've never done it before. So I think just talking to people and not being afraid to reach out to folks. Like I have done cold outreach on LinkedIn to people who have gone to Yale, just like, hey, would you mind like talking to me for 15 minutes? I'd love to learn more about what you do. And I tend to say yes when I do that, but I think not being afraid to put yourself out there has been helpful for me. And I think can be helpful as you learn like what the navigation looks like. And I've definitely had a number of clients where they said, oh yeah, I worked for 30 years in the oil industry and now I decided to be a CEO of like this nonprofit. Like the amount of times I've heard that, or I was on the board of this and then they were doing a search and I said, maybe I want something different. And I've heard that story plenty of times. So it's not uncommon for people to go in one direction and then switch drastically for whatever reason that, you know, works for their life, as well as like what the impact they want to have in the world.
I just add a little bit, so when you're done. On the question of balance. I guess I should say you should do what I say, not what I did. Because I was 120% into my job. Every job I had, including running the U.S. Grant Foundation. And that meant I didn't spend much time with my family, some uncles and cousins. And I married late. It was probably an advantage to have the freedom early on in my career, but it was wrong. And we got married so late that we decided not to have children. If I had one regret in life now, it's not having children.
Yeah, I'd probably offer that balance, right? It's not necessarily here and now. Balance is in a lifetime, right? And that you could have stepped back for a period and then re-enjoyed, right? And we all can go through that thought.
Let me say a word about Jonathan, because I think he's being too hard on himself. I worked for him in 1969. I was a newly married undergraduate and junior here, and he began urban studies internship, and I was working for him. And he was working 110%, but he told me, you don't live to work. You don't work to live. Your life is not about your work. Your life is about your life, and your work supports it, but it doesn't it doesn't subsume it. It doesn't take it over.
Right.
And even though
Give you the advice.
he gave me advice, he had a hard time living it, but he gave me, he certainly gave me the advice. And
Consistent, John.
but I think what he meant, what he said, when he talked about it was, you have to do your life's work. You have to do what makes you alive, what you care about. If your life's work is to get rich, then get rich and then figure out what responsibilities and opportunities that gives you and so forth. If your life's work is to be a elementary school teacher or something else, if that's a writer or an actor or whatever, if that's what you learn about yourself, if that's what you have to be, then do that and do that as well as you can. And the rest of it will find a way. You'll find a way to make that life meaningful for you and to be a part of a community and to be of service and to feel at the end good about the path you have taken. If you convince yourself to do something on a theoretical or conceptual basis, and this is what I should be doing, or this is what my parents want me to do, or whatever, it can't work. It can't work. But there are many paths to
That's right.
to doing your life's work. And some of them involve being a corporate attorney and doing that, be a good corporate attorney, be a noble, be an honorable corporate attorney, do that very well, and then decide what those resources that gives you the opportunity to do. And he was there. He was not the grinding nerd that he described at the time.
I'm going to bring this back to you. And Jonathan said, find a great mentor. So now you're in a position where you're about to launch into life after Yale, not too far on. So how do you think about finding a mentor? From a YANA perspective, how can we help you?
I think I was lucky enough to find a really great mentor this past summer, which helped me launch the program with the girls that are now here. He's just awesome. I met him at a conference. He's a judge, and he's just been instrumental in my journey of like wanting to figure out what I want to do. Every time he calls me, like, "So what are your plans for the summer? Did you figure it out yet?" And it's been really nice to have someone other than my family pushing forward to find that summer internship or summer experience. But I think also I keep telling everyone I meet that one trip that I took with, I think, the Dwight Hall team to the club of the Yale Club of New York. I think that one night really turned everything around for me, and now I'm here sitting in this chair on this panel. I met incredible people, Desire, Mark, and David, everyone just amazing. Bruce too as well. I think that night was just incredible. It connected me with so many different people, and I talked to so many different people, and I'm now seeing so many different pathways that I could take as well. So I think just being in this circle and being involved with YANA I think I'm really set for life. I keep saying that. I think that day was really an incredible day for me. And I will keep owing, I think, my successes from here on forward to that one single day. And I'm so glad I said yes to that email.
Yeah, I want to talk about a concept called enactment, which I learned years later when I studied family therapy to have the name for this. But I want to use a Yale example. So I went to Yale when it was all men. And we men complained about that regularly, many times a day, right? And then one of us, I can't remember who it was, had the idea of what became Co-Ed Week, which was, we went to all the women's colleges, we picked a week in the spring, and we said to all the young women at Vassar and Smith, and come to Yale and pretend you are a Yale student. We'll clean out the entryways so you have bathrooms that don't have guys, right? But just come to Yale, and if you're an English major, find the course that is equivalent and go to class and raise your hand, right? If you're a math major, so whatever you're gonna do, okay? And we took the weekend, early April, and a lot of women came to Yale, okay, and we cleaned out entryways and so, right? And what was extraordinary was that by Monday and Tuesday, as women were in classes, raising their hands and answering the question the professor had just asked, right? everybody saw how wonderful it would be. We weren't just talking hypothetically. It was like all of a sudden there were people walking around campus smiling and laughing and right? And then Caitlin Brewster didn't know what to do. So he enacted what the Caitlin Brewster enactment was. He held a coffee to discuss co-education. Okay. And so there are the women, and this was only like Tuesday-ish of the week. So, right? And Abby Soifer, who was an undergraduate, had a sister who was a Vassar. And she came to OOB. And there's Caitlin Brewster sitting there being, giving a very pompous presentation about the pros and cons, right? And Marlene raised her hand and she said, Mr. Brewster, can I ask you a question? And she said, sure. She said, I need to understand, is it your fear that my beauty will distract these gentlemen so much from the classes that they won't be able to concentrate? Is that the problem? And she paused. And then she said, or is it that you don't think I'm smart enough to attend Yale? But my brother's here and my scores are 128 points higher than his. Right? That was Tuesday. By the end of the week, Yale had reversed course and the following week voted to admit women. Okay? And it wasn't till years later when I studied family therapy that the phrase enactment became clear. You can spend a huge amount of time talking about we should be doing this, we should be doing it, right? But when your 10-year-old makes dinner for the family, okay, it is so much more powerful than 1,000 times that you tell your 10-year-old that he or she should be helping around the house, right? And so I'm fascinated by what are the things for Yale at this very crazy time that we're living in, right? I mean, I graduated from here in 1969. Those were crazy times, right? And there were people I knew burning down buildings. That enactment was pathological, right? But the question of what we should be enacting now, what will help ourselves and others visualize what it is like to deal productively with living under the Trump administration?
I'm going to hold that question, right, because it's an important question. And I think we're at the hour, and so I want to be respectful of people's time. And I want to thank the panel for their thoughts. Thank the YANA team, the undergraduate club here, and just thank you for organizing. We have food, we have people, and we're talking about the power of social connection, right? And YANA is about that social connection starts on the one-to-one individual basis. So we have time to eat and talk and chat and connect with each other. And I encourage us to try to answer your question.
I'm going to add one final sentence.
Please.
Yale and the United States of America are in a crisis now. Anybody that we're not kidding ourselves, okay? The question of what we should be enacting now has not been central enough. We talk about the crisis, we go on it, we tell Trump jokes, right? But the question of what are the things we should be doing so that we could say to other people, wasn't that fun? Isn't that better than the way we were doing it last week?
Well, thank you for the thoughts, and I wish we had answers to your question. I'm a little lost right now, but thanks everybody for coming tonight.
Thanks, Ron.
Appreciate it.
Next meeting.